I told him, "Go get our drinks at the party like a good boy." His revenge started that night. "You can have everything," and in the blink of an eye, everything you had would be gone because of something so trivial as the words that come out of my mouth. And if I'm being honest, the words that came out of my mouth were almost never really under my control. It was my emotions that controlled what I said, so when I was angry, the things that left my mouth were extreme. And if I was sad, then I would say the most depressing things. And it was that nonsensical character that struck my relationship deep in its core, leaving me heartbroken and my marriage in shambles. Jude and I had been married for almost 4 years, and all those years were indeed the best years of my life, but they weren't without their downsides. There were times we argued, and harsh words that we didn't mean were thrown around. No, that isn't accurate. I was the one that threw harsh words around. Most times, my husband would just be quiet and listen to me, and when he spoke, it was to address the issue on the ground instead of insulting me or raising his voice at me. But all in all, things were well. My husband took care of me, but one day, about 2 years after our marriage, I did something that pissed him off. That was the first time I did anything like that, and I didn't even do it on purpose, but I realized that he took it seriously. We were having a good laugh on a weekend with his younger brother, who had come over for a drink and some small talk, and I jokingly said that I used to think my husband was the bravest man in the world until he saw a spider in our room some days prior, and he ran out like a little girl. I noticed how my husband's demeanor changed after I said that. He suddenly wasn't smiling as much anymore. And it wasn't just my husband. Once I said that, I expected his brother to laugh his head off because my husband was always the toughest looking guy in the room. But my husband's brother just let out a suffocated chuckle, one that seemed forced because he didn't want it to look like he didn't give a reaction to the things I said. I noticed how the air suddenly felt thicker and heavy. My husband didn't say anything for some time. Then he suddenly told me that he needed to go out and that he would be back soon. I smiled and asked him to get me some cupcakes on his way back if he could. He just gave a light grunt to show that he heard me, then he left. After he left, his brother looked me in my eyes and told me that his brother, my husband, didn't appreciate being belittled or humiliated in public. I didn't understand any of what my husband's brother was saying, because in my mind, I didn't say or do anything that belittled or humiliated my husband. Besides, it wasn't like we were actually in public. We were just having a conversation with his brother. It wasn't that deep to me, but I guess my husband found it so. His brother told me that I should try to keep the things that happened between my husband and me private, especially the embarrassing ones, and that I should try to understand that my husband could sometimes be a hardhead. I chuckled and told him that it wasn't a problem, that I could handle my husband. My husband's brother took a sip of his beer and said, "Okay," but the okay sounded like he didn't believe me, or he didn't think I could handle my husband. But looking back now, I realized that the problem was my diction. Me saying I could handle my husband just made his brother know that things were going to be difficult for me, because he knew his brother didn't like to be handled. After my husband's brother left, I cleaned the house and waited on the porch for my husband while reading a fashion magazine. My husband came back about 30 minutes after I took my seat on the porch. He bought the cupcakes I had asked him to, and I was so excited that he got me what I asked for. And to feel like I had my marriage under control and I had the foresight of a good wife, I apologized to him for bringing up the spider thing while we were talking to his brother. He looked at me with enough sweetness to give a person diabetes. He looked like he felt so lucky to have married me. He gave me a hug and told me it was okay, then led me inside. I had learned that my husband didn't like to be embarrassed, belittled, or anything of that sort. Sure, no one likes to experience any of these things, but with him, it was different. He took them a lot more personally than other people normally would, and I guess I unknowingly added that knowledge like a new arrow into my quiver. When we were getting close to our 3rd anniversary, I remember how he went out of his way to make sure we celebrated it. Our friends told us that marriages only celebrated large landmarks like a decade, or 2 decades, or a silver jubilee, those kinds of things. But he did not care. He was so happy to celebrate us clocking 3 years in marriage that he wanted to show everyone how happy he was to be married to me. And I honestly didn't mind. It made me feel special. Plus, I didn't mind celebrating. I was the kind of person that didn't even need a reason to celebrate things. If I could afford to, I'd have partied every week. He invited our friends and family members, and things were going so well. When our anniversary came, he showed me off like I was the most special thing in his life. He got me a new gown that I loved so much. The celebration got underway, and it was going well until I did something stupid. Everyone was eating, drinking, and having fun when I asked him to dance in front of everyone. I knew he couldn't dance to save his life, and I knew he didn't like public performances, but while he was still trying to tell me that he couldn't dance, I began clapping and chanting that he should dance for us. Everyone liked the idea, and soon everyone began clapping and chanting as well. He looked at me like he was annoyed that I did that to him. I was so scared that he would walk away and I would be embarrassed, but he went to the middle and actually started dancing to the music. I breathed a sigh of relief when he began dancing, and instead of me simply enjoying watching him dance, I pulled out my phone and made a video of him dancing. I posted the video on Instagram, as I had been posting all day. I felt the need to post every bit of that anniversary party on the internet. After my husband was done dancing, he just walked to go get some drinks as people cheered him. I ran to him and told him that he was awesome. He laughed and told me never to make him do anything like that again. He was smiling when he said that, but I knew he was serious. I smiled as well and nodded my head in confirmation. The party continued without any hiccups, but I had no clue that it wasn't going to be that way for the rest of the day. After the party ended, the guests had gone, and it was just my husband and me left. We weren't the kind of people who could stay in an environment that wasn't in pristine condition, so we began cleaning up. While we were doing that, his phone began blowing up with so many notifications. He was confused because he had never gotten that many notifications at once. He checked his phone and he began reading out some of the notifications that were popping up. Most of the messages were saying that he had nice moves. He was honestly confused, so he called his friend, who wasn't able to make it to the party, and asked what he was talking about in his text. His friend was so happy, like he had seen the most funny thing ever. He said that if he had known that my husband would give such classic content, then he wouldn't have missed the anniversary party. My husband was still confused and asked his friend what he was babbling on about. His friend told him that he had never seen him dance, and now he was never going to unsee what he had seen. He ended the call before my husband could even say anything else. My husband looked at me, but before he could say anything, he got another notification from his friend. It was a link to a video on Instagram. My husband tapped the link and saw the video of his dancing. He looked at the account that posted it and saw my name. That was when he looked at me with the most devilish eyes I had ever seen and asked me to explain what he was looking at. He then asked me to delete the video. I laughed and told him that I wouldn't do that. He asked me what I said, and I repeated the exact words I said to him, that I wouldn't take down the video from my Instagram page. He looked in my eyes and told me that he wasn't going to ask again, and then he added that he wasn't joking with me. I was so mad that I stormed out of the house and went to my mom's place, but before I left, I told him to call me when he had decided to be reasonable. When I got to my mother's house that night, she was confused. She and my younger sister had left the party earlier, and now I was coming to the house. My mother asked me what I was doing there, and I told her everything that had happened. I was expecting them to take my side, but my mother told me to delete the video from my Instagram page. She said this without even blinking. I was stunned, perhaps because I was expecting her to side with me. She and my sister testified that they were honestly very shocked when they saw him on the dance floor breaking out all those moves, and it reminded them of how much he loved me. My husband hated dancing, yet he danced because of me. My mother and sister were honestly surprised that I wasn't satisfied with that. In all their years of knowing him, they had never seen him dance, and he did so because he wanted the perfect wedding anniversary for me, and I still wanted more. My mother advised me to take down the video, but I was still being stubborn. I told her that I wouldn't do that. She looked at me in disbelief and told me that it was my marriage, so I should do what I wanted. She had given me her advice, and she couldn't do more. She said something she always said when I was being stubborn after she had advised me. She told me that she can only lead a horse to a river, but she can't force the horse to drink from the river. She had given me the advice. It was left to me to use it or not. I slept over at my mom's place that night, and when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't find my phone. I hurried to the living room, and I saw my phone on the center table. I knew for a fact that I didn't drop my phone there. I took it with me to the room, and I kept it by my side before I fell asleep. I immediately picked it up, and the first thing I checked was my Instagram account. I checked for the video, and it was gone. It was no longer on my page. I was so mad that I shouted out like a monster that was injured. My mother ran into the living room, asking me what was wrong, and I told her that the video had been deleted. I asked her if she was the one that did it. She looked at me like I was crazy and asked me what she would be doing with that stupid phone of mine. I couldn't believe that sudden statement, and I asked her that if she didn't do it, then who did? My sister came into the living room with a very subtle voice and confessed that she was the one that deleted the video. I ran towards her, but she hid behind my mother, and I couldn't touch her. My mother wouldn't let me. I shouted at her, asking her why she would do that, and she said that I was too blind to know what I had. I was confused by her statement. She told me that I had a wonderful husband who was more than happy to celebrate a third wedding anniversary. She said that most people would see that as a waste of money, and despite almost everyone trying to talk him out of it, he refused. He had the party. He bought me a dress. He danced for me. She even stated that even outside the anniversary, he was willing to do anything for me, and I couldn't simply delete one simple video to pacify him. She said that I had no idea how lucky I was to get a man like him. She added that I had no idea the amount of dates she had been on, and how most of the guys out there aren't genuine or as loving. But my husband loved with every bit of himself. All he was asking was for me to simply take down a video, and I was being a hothead. She said that if she were me, she would delete the whole account and wipe her phone's memory, if that was what was needed to calm my husband down. When I heard those words, I staggered back a bit. They were words that I needed to hear, and they were not delivered subtly. They hit like boulders. I sat down on one of the couches in the living room for a few seconds, and when I got up, I said that I needed to go. They asked me where I was going, and I told them that I was going home. I left my mother's house and went back home to meet my husband. He was standing in front of the house when I got back. His eyes were red like he wasn't able to sleep all night. There was a small smile on his lip that he was trying to mask with a serious expression. I bit my lips, and all the words my sister said to me came pouring through my head. They caused tears to gather in my eyes. I wanted to be tough, but the first words that came out of my mouth were that I was sorry. He couldn't keep his face straight any longer. He smiled with teary eyes and opened his arms wide. I ran into his embrace, and he hugged me so tightly, telling me that he loved me so much and that he didn't want to spend another night apart from me. It was a very emotional day for me. He led me into the house, and he had gotten me my favorite cupcakes. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. It was all very touching, and one would expect that having experienced that, I would know how to rein in my tongue and control the things I said. But no, it wasn't. At least not for me. It was like I was a slow learner. Things were okay for quite some time, and we didn't have any significant altercations, at least not significant enough for me to remember. It was like we had cracked it. Sure, I had my occasional tantrums, and I occasionally said things that I shouldn't have said, but it wasn't anything that big a deal, so we were able to get through them. But then, as we were nearing our 4th marriage anniversary, barely a month before, I did something unreasonably and overwhelmingly stupid that put a knife in the middle of the things that held my marriage together and completely shattered it. I got promoted at work, a position I had been working towards and eyeing for such a long time that I had almost lost hope that it would ever happen. And to honor my promotion, my boss held a party for my promotion. It was unprecedented, but it made me feel special. When I told my husband about the promotion, you should have seen the way he limped from his seat in joy and screamed as though he just won millions of dollars at the lottery. He was so happy and so proud. I had never seen somebody be that happy for another person's success in my entire life, and it made me feel so loved. He hugged me tightly and told me that he was the happiest person in the world and that he knew I could get the promotion. To be honest, I had already given up hope on the promotion. He was the one that kept telling me to keep believing and striving to get it. I was moved to tears with how he celebrated me, and when I told him that my boss was throwing me a party to celebrate the promotion, he was literally jumping like a child on a trampoline. It made me laugh so much. But if I had known what would have happened at that party, I would have canceled the party. Or I wouldn't have gone at all. The party was in 2 days, and my husband took me shopping to pick out a new dress. I think it was after we got the dress that I actually realized that I had accomplished what I had spent years working towards. On the night of the party, I got dressed, and I felt elevated, like I was bigger, higher. My husband helped me pick the dress, and I remember his exact words. He said that the dress was a statement of my success and my achievement. So when I put it on, I felt like everyone and everything around me was beneath me. I felt like I could touch the clouds. I felt like I was truly deserving of the position that I had been elevated to. My husband drove me to the event. He was dressed sharply in a tuxedo, and it made me feel proud to walk with him. He was as handsome as the first time I saw him, as angelic and graceful as the first time he spoke to me, like he could walk on water. When he parked the car, he gave me his arm to hold and told me that I looked like the most shiny thing that evening. I looked up and I could see the stars, and it made me blush. He had practically said I was brighter than even the stars in the sky. I was honestly flattered. He led me into the building where the party was being held, and my boss and colleagues from work were already present. They clapped as I walked in, and my husband went aside, letting me take the spotlight. That was the kind of man he was. He wanted me to shine as bright as I could without him even appearing in that light. The applause finally died down when my boss walked up to me, shook my hand, and told me that I deserved the honor I was getting, and she asked me to make her proud. The party went into full swing with light music filling the room. People were talking to each other, drinking and eating, while a few danced lightly to the music that was playing. A lot of people came to congratulate me from time to time, and I was being pulled away from my husband a lot. At one point, some of the people who were my superiors but given my promotion, I was now on the same level with them, pulled me aside and were talking to me. It felt like they were welcoming me to their gang, to the elite table. I felt like I was being initiated into some upper echelon cult. I had always seen them walking together and flocking together. They were always so bossy, telling people what to do and whatnot. I envied them, and now I was one of them, the high rankers. And the more we talked, the more I spoke like them, the more I sounded like them. When the waiter came around us with some finger food, we devoured the entire tray, and one of the guys there asked the waiter to go fetch some more of the finger food that he had brought. He was so rude and cold to the waiter that the poor boy ran away with his tail between his legs. And soon, my husband came around since he had been alone for too long. I guess he wanted to try and steal me away or at least join us because he didn't know anyone at my workplace for him to talk to. But when he came over, he said hi to the entire table, and then he asked me if I was okay. I told him that I was, and I could have just ended things there, but I didn't. I took a step further. I don't know what I was exactly thinking, but I think I wanted to show my new gang of colleagues that I had a husband that was willing to do anything for me. So I told him that I was thirsty. Without me asking, he said he would go fetch me a glass of drink. But then I called him to a halt and told him that my friends were parched as well, and I told him to be a good boy and go get drinks for everyone on the table. I said it with so much finesse and confidence that I didn't even realize the weight of what I had said. My husband looked at me, his eyes sterner than the bulletproof glass. He wasn't rude or anything of that nature. He just told me that he just remembered that he had an emergency to take care of and he had to leave early. He didn't wait for my reply, even though I said okay to him. He walked out of the venue without even looking back, and there was something about the way he strutted out of the building that terrified me. After that, the night went by in a blur. I hung out with the alleged elite group till the night was over, and one of them even offered me a ride home, knowing that my husband had left. It was one of the best nights of my life. I felt so accomplished and proud. Before that night, I could count the number of words I had said to each and every one at the upper hierarchy of the company chain, but that night, I talked to them so much that I couldn't even remember what half of our conversations were about. I was just so happy. But then I got home, and that happiness began shifting. My husband was seated in the living room when I got in. He had his legs crossed and the lights were off, so I didn't even see him at first. I was on my way to the room when I heard a voice ask me how it felt. I was startled to the deepest parts of my soul. I nearly jumped in fright. I stopped and looked in the direction I heard his voice. I quickly pulled out my phone and put on the torch. I asked him why he was sitting there in the dark. He didn't answer me. He just asked me the same question as before. He asked me how it felt. I first looked for the light switch and put on the bulbs in the living room, and then I asked him what he was talking about. He said I was talking down on him like he was my slave. He just wanted to know how it felt to me. He asked me if it felt empowering, if it made me look like a boss amongst the new crowd I wanted to hang out with. I waited around until it was a few minutes to 12, almost afternoon. That was when I picked up my phone and called my husband. He didn't answer his call. I called him a few more times, but he didn't pick up any of the calls. After about 10 minutes past 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard his car pull up in front of the house. I rushed outside to meet him, and I confronted him, asking him where he had been. He told me he didn't owe me any explanations. I was really shocked by this, and I asked if he was right in the head. Yeah. My mouth went wagging immediately. He told me that since I had decided to be a mannerless, crazy person, that I was on my own from that day onwards. He didn't say a word to me after that. He just walked into the house and packed his clothes and stuff from our room to the guest bedroom. I kept yelling at him and calling him names as he moved his things between the rooms. I even began accusing him of being so insecure about his position as the man of the house. I said that he was only behaving this way because I got promoted. My husband looked at me with so much disappointment in his eyes. He didn't say a word to me. My husband worked from home and normally used the guest's room as his office, but now it was his bedroom and office. He went in there and didn't come out again. He locked himself in, and I wasn't able to. My husband didn't talk to me that whole day, or even the entire weekend. I was thinking it was something that would blow over, but the next morning he still didn't open the door. I was dressed and ready to go to work, and as was our routine, I needed him to drive me to work, but he wasn't opening the door. I called him and told him that his attitude was no longer funny, and that it was never funny to begin with. I said all manner of things, but he didn't answer the door. I had to take a taxi to work. I was so angry, and when I came back after work, I was locked out of the house. I didn't have a key because my husband was almost always at home, so I didn't need a key to unlock or lock the door. I called my husband's name out loud and knocked on the door so many times, but there was no answer. I then took out my phone and called him on the phone, but he didn't answer my phone calls either. I was still thinking about how to get in when he suddenly unlocked the door from within. I couldn't believe him. I hurried in to give him a piece of my mind, but before I could say a single word to him, he looked at me, told me that this was a gentle reminder of who the man in our marriage was. Then he got into the house and locked the door. I was too tired and too speechless to say anything. I just stood there in disbelief, and when I finally opened my mouth to say something, I just sighed in exhaustion and went to my room. For the whole week, my husband didn't talk to me and didn't do any of the things he usually did for me. I was finding it hard to adjust without his comforting and encouraging words and his unwavering support. I called my mother and cried to her. She asked me for an exact account of what happened and how everything started, and when I told her everything, she told me that she couldn't help me. She said I was reaping the fruit of my actions and that the only way to undo what I had done was to apologize to my husband and actively make amends for my actions. Apologies are not exactly my strong suit, so I'm sort of stranded. Update. Hello. It's been a while since I've been here. So, last time I made a post here, my marriage was falling apart, all because of my stupidity and my pride. My life felt odd. There was an emptiness in my chest that I couldn't quite contain. I was always worried and frustrated, and the little things that didn't used to faze me became so annoying to me. I felt like I couldn't breathe because some nights I'd feel so lonely and cold, and I couldn't hold my husband. When I'd have nightmares and jump up from my bed in the middle of the night, he wasn't there to check on me. He didn't give me rides to work, and even his occasional romantic gesture of picking me up from work wasn't happening. I tried buying my favorite cupcakes, but they didn't taste as good because he wasn't the one that got them for me. He was always awake before me, and he'd prepare coffee for me and iron my clothes, but he wasn't any of that, and I felt like my life was falling apart. Even when our 4th wedding anniversary came around, he didn't say a single word to me. That was when I cracked. I knocked on his room door and fell on my knees. I apologized and told him that I had learned my lesson, that I won't ever talk to him in the manner that I did that night at the party. He looked at me and told me that my words meant nothing to him, only my actions did. Then he walked back into the room. So, from that day on, I began talking to my husband very respectfully, and sometimes he answered, sometimes he didn't. I think he was giving me distance because he didn't want any more disrespect from me. But if I'm being honest, I feel like there's hope, because I'm doing the right things now. I've learned my lesson, and I am actively working towards becoming a better and respectful wife, a wife that my husband is happy to do things for. I believe that if I just keep on the track I'm on, I will have my marriage back. And I honestly cannot wait for my marriage to be great again, and for this heartache to disappear. I miss sleeping in the same room as my husband. I miss holding him. I know the right things to do, and I am doing them. I have changed for the better, and I have you all to thank for that. You pushed me to do the right thing, which was apologizing and amending my ways, for which I am very grateful. And I pray things goes back to normal.